And hey everyone, happy Friday. Maybe for the first time, or maybe not if you saw the previous one. We're still letting a couple people extra trickle in, but in the meantime, I say hi. Kallisti says hi, and he's got a nice Celine wallet hat on that I can see. Yeah. Uh, did you ever mention where the name Celine came from? Like why that you decided to have that be your the wallet name?
I think we did mention it on air once on the Bitcoin Cash podcast Celine episode. I think we mentioned it, but we'll go ahead and talk
Mm-hmm.
about it. So it was actually so I first off like Kallisti Greek mythology reference,
Mm-hmm.
the whole Apple Discord thing. So I'm pretty into like mythology and whatnot. So um the it was kind of a play on like crypto bros. Are always like we're gonna go to the moon, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so there's already Moon Wallet over on the
Yeah.
BTC Lightning Wallet. And I was like, well, I don't want to be called Moon Wallet because I like deep references. Like, I don't want it to be like so obvious. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I guess I just like looked up the Greek goddess of the moon probably because that's just probably how my brain works. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, so I mean, there's other like moon goddesses, right? But I just liked the name Selene, and then it was because she's a Titan goddess. She's not like
Mm-hmm.
I think Artemis is the other like well-known Greek moon goddess.
Mm-hmm.
So, oh, cool. Well, I like that deep reference. So, and it just kind of rolls off the tongue. Like Celine is just a good name. And then
Yeah.
when Jeremy put the logo, like it just worked really well, and so it just stuck. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
also like just some of the mythology itself. I mean, you've got like I guess this man that she is like undergoing eternal sleep, and she visits him like all the time, and it's kind of like Bcashers tending to Bcash, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's just a lot of like it just makes sense in my head, so it just stuck.
Yeah. I mean, I do kind of like those. And Jeremy also commented, Celine is also associated with the bull.
Oh,
So there
yep,
we
yep, yep.
go. Yeah, I do kind of like those sorts of like fun, clever, kind of like association type things when they're done right. Um, for example, one thing that I think was very clever, but is a little ominous and dubious these days, is the Terra Luna, Earth
Mhm.
Moon. From Earth to Moon. We're all going to go to the moon if you buy Luna. Oh, wait. Challenger happened. Boom. Just,
More Terra, less Luna.
yeah. Terra Luna got turned into Luna Terra, from the moon down to Earth. Got smashed. So, yeah, I think it was pretty funny stuff. But yeah, good stuff. Let's see, 6 minutes. Yeah, it's good. While you guys are watching, do you mind checking on the Twitter version? I think that's having a potato moment. I don't think that one's working out super well.
Then you just go to your page.
Yeah, just see what just see. I put a tweet in also the Telegram group, but you could also just go to the tweet. And yeah, it's I don't know if the Twitter one's working out super well today, but that's fine because I've only been doing this on Twitter the last couple times. I had one that worked out really well earlier today, and that's kind of where it's at. But it looks like the YouTube one's kind of low quality too, but whatever. That's why there's an Odyssey link in. So this is decentralization, folks. Right? You can always watch it on the highest quality, whatever it is. But yeah, let me see. I think. Well, I won't worry about the Twitter one too much. I can always upload it there later if I need to. But why don't we just, as seeing as we're getting a little bit of time in, why don't we just hit the intro and then go start talking about the stuff of the day? All right, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. All right, so hey everyone, happy Friday officially. I'm joined by the one and only, as far as I know, Kallisti. How's it going, man?
Not bad. How are you?
That's pretty good. Just crazy busy day, all the fun stuff. This is Digital Cash Rundown, episode 127. Getting up there, the numbers. And we're talking all kinds of stuff about the next Bitcoin store of drama, the next thing that's going up there. And yeah, mostly that kind of stuff. It's very Bitcoin centric, obviously. I wouldn't call this an entirely Bcash or Victory Lap episode, but there's plenty of stuff to draw on, I'm sure. And also, I think there's a lot of fun things, positive things that could be in Bitcoin's future, BTC's future, I should say, if people chose to do it. But that's all that. Remind you, if you don't like the quality on whatever, there's the Odyssey link in the YouTube link and vice versa. And I am trying to stream this on Twitter as well. And if it's not turning out on Twitter super well, I mean, actually, it's looking like it's looking okay right now, actually, which is nice. So anyway, let's hope that all works out. Anyway, so obviously leave comments. If you have one of my NFTs and you're in my Discord, you can obviously leave a super chat, and I will be compelled to answer that. In the very near future, I'm going to also do that for YouTube and Twitter and Odyssey, so that you can also do, like, if subscribers can leave comments. And as always, the anyone who's throwing me money is going to get at least an answer. Everyone else, it's just like, see if I like you. See if I like your comment. Although I will mostly read whatever Jeremy says in the comment, because he's kind of, in the package deal. Also, when he's also he can sub for me in a last minute situation, even if it's super inconvenient for him. So like that means a lot to me. So I'm going to pay him back by letting him shit post in my comments and read them out. So that's how that works. All right. So first we'll just talk about, let me hit the whoops, maybe not this one, not the LOP one. Let's start with emergent reasons, right? So Drivechains. So Layer 2 Labs, which is the, I guess, Drivechain focused organization run by Paul Stortz, who's been pushing for Drivechains, which is the old but new Bitcoin Layer 2 scaling solution kind of thing. Probably the closest to actually just like upgrading the core protocol out there. He posted this video which just had like the earth kind of imploding, and it says the world after Drivechain merged with Bitcoin. Kind of a little bit of a salty comment, like, because so many maxis have opposed him on this stuff, and it's just like oh, Bitcoin will be destroyed if this like thing happens. And then good old Emergent Reasons, who's also been on the show before, commented at a very good tweet. He says Paul's journey through the steps, and he's like, denial, anger, and then bargaining, depression, acceptance are on the way. So, first, Kallisti, what's your sort of instant reaction to all this kind of Drivechain drama?
Well, this meme, first off, it took me a minute to realize that it was like an anti-meme where it's like, oh yeah, all of these Bitcoiners think this is going to happen,
Yeah.
but in view, it's like the complete opposite, but it's like actually a bad meme. And he got really roasted in the comments for it. So
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a backfire, like, because you have to have like the public favor first before you can do like a successful anti-meme.
Mm-hmm.
Like self-deprecating humor only works if like people actually like you.
Yeah,
So,
of course. Or if people understand it, right? I mean, I don't even know if I'd call it self-deprecating humor. I'd almost just call it like salty humor, like
yeah.
straw manning the opponent kind of thing, But the problem is it's a little too, it's not clear enough so that everyone gets what you're talking about, and it just confuses the messaging. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. But the whole Drivechain drama thing has been very interesting because it's pretty much it's been pretty clear for a while that Bitcoin, has to make, like, Bitcoin needs something to work better. It's not just functional right now because there was an explicit decision made by a bunch of people, but probably not as many as people might think, back in around the 2014, because starting with 2014, because I remember in early 2015 is when Mike Hearn did his big rage quit from Bitcoin, and I think it was called like the resolution of the Bitcoin experiment. When you say he predicted,
Like the blog post he wrote.
yeah, and I read that live. Like I was already, I think I was already working full time in crypto at the time, or Bitcoin as it was, right? And I remember just when I remember I was so early to it, I didn't get it at the time. I thought he was being a little Debbie Downer, and I was like, yeah, come on, dude, it's gonna be fine. And then within a year or so, I was like, oh shit, So he was right. But so this has been going on for a while, and clearly Bitcoin decided to not, or it ended up going in a direction of not scaling on chain, and not more, and more than that, not adding new functionality to do everything that people wanted. It's so, as a result, everything that people want, including to use Bitcoin at all, is kind of pushed off to layer twos, to something else that's built on top of it. And Lightning is, of course, the big promise. Although I almost think that Lightning was sort of like a red herring to like distract people, so Blockstream and other people could build like Liquid and other side chains, like federated side chains, but they ended up bombing. And some people have different opinions on this. I kind of think it was mostly, I would say good faith, because that's not accurate, but it was mostly an actual genuine effort to like get Liquid and stuff to be what Bitcoin uses. And I just think that they honestly failed. But some people believe that the goal the whole time through was just to hamper Bitcoin and like get rid of it as a useful thing. Do you have a position on that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, because I'm a bit of a latecomer, more of my thinking on that topic is more like conspirational. Like
Yeah.
it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, kind of what you said, like probably all a red herring, just because we want to have Blockstream products come through and be how we use Bitcoin. They want to profit on that. It's basically, let's reinvent Visa, MasterCard, but on Bitcoin, right? That's what we have, a routed networking protocol. You can make money on the routing. Well, that's Lightning, and then you have Liquid. I don't think I've ever seen anybody seriously talk about Liquid or how it works or whether anybody uses it. Like, it's just dead on arrival.
Yeah.
And so I would definitely say, like you said, they flopped. And I think it's just about now, with all of this drive chain stuff going on, that people are also starting to maybe critically think about Lightning a little more.
Yeah.
I think more people are starting to realize that it doesn't actually work, or like, wait a second, oh, we are like 90% custodial. What's up with this? Well, and now we've got Phoenix Wallet is apparently the saving grace. Now we've got splicing that can do some kind of magic to make self-custody easier on Lightning, and that's okay, great. So like any win for self-custody is a win, but I still don't believe that on a technical level Lightning works, that on a practical level Lightning works, and I think people are continuing to delude themselves by supporting it.
Absolutely. And the thing is, like, first off, I want to, if I had some sort of crypto company or tech startup or whatever, I would want to hire a lot of Lightning devs. First off, to save them from their misery, but also because of its genius, just how far they've engineered something all like half workable, not workable, but half workable out of this. Like, as far as like the creativity and stuff, like the Phoenix team especially, I think they've done a great job making something that seems actually decent-ish, while being technically non-custodial, and using Lightning for the whole thing. Actually, it's like, wow, you guys have done a lot. But on another thing, like, yeah, obviously Lightning is fine, it has its own use cases, but as far as like, this is what everyone will use Bitcoin through, it's awful. And I think that for a lot of people predicted this would happen, right? A lot of unknowns were there too, like, oh, it'll work out, and I just think that the free market's kind of shown that the unknowns are known, that it's just, I think we've reached the outer limits of Lightning. We figured out what it can do well. what it can't do well, and to get what you wanted out of it, not what it's best at, by the way, but what you wanted out of it, it requires just so many compromises of design, so much extra engineering, and essentially just centralize it. It works so smooth if it's centralized. And so I think I would call this the resolution of the Lightning experiment is coming around now. And that doesn't mean that, again, that Lightning doesn't have good use cases, but general purpose digital cash is not the use case. It's just not. And so
what is the use case then? Because as far as I've known, that's all Lightning was ever meant to solve. I mean, let's think about the roots of why Lightning exists. It's because we refused on-chain scaling over on the BTC side. So
yes.
If you want those fast and cheap payments, then we're going to do it on Lightning, right? That's been the narrative for as long as I've been around.
Yeah, so the narrative, so I guess the way to fully understand that is there's two-way payment channels forever in Bitcoin and other cryptos. And those are very useful, right? Like if you start a bar tab and you just like, you pay, you say $100 worth, and then every new drink or every new peanut you order, whatever, you just go beep, 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 just slide them over. And obviously in a low congestion environment, that's not fine. If you're paying a cent or even like 5 cents per transaction, 5 cents on top of a $5, let's say, beer, it's fine if you do that each time you order. But like, it's those sorts of repeat things, like especially if you are like you and a friend are watching a sport, and every time you're betting on it in real time, and every time something happens, you slide some over this side, slide some over that side, and then you just settle at the end of the night. That kind of stuff is what two-way payment channels are good for. Lightning connects two-way payment channels. And so it's either if you want to, for whatever reason, you need to loop in someone else, or so for example, if Twitter ran a big old Lightning hub, because they already process everyone's payments, right? Ran a big old Lightning hub, and everyone just had a channel with Twitter, just like Phoenix does with, the async node, and then all the users. Then people could be tipping each other back and forth. Every single like is a tip. It goes zip, zip, zip through the hub, zip to the other person, zip out here. And it's not like if you pay like a cent or two per transaction, you start to get poor just shit posting on Twitter all day because it's a lot. But if it's just little things going back and forth, and you don't mind that it's a closed loop ecosystem because you're not banking through Twitter, it's just Twitter, right?
Right. I can withdraw from Twitter at any time.
Yeah.
My own wallet.
And more importantly, you could do all that in a non-custodial way to where even Twitter can't rug you. They can just rug your connection to all these other people to pay through them. In which case, like, so you got $150 in Twitter and you're sending it to people back and forth all over the place. And then one day Twitter decides to just force close everyone's channel. Well, your $150 is kind of stuck for like a week or so, but then you still have it and you can just do whatever you want with it. It's fine. And that's a good use case, and I don't mind that being in Bitcoin or even a different crypto to just take a lot of the congestion off of that so that transactions instead of like 50 cents or something or 5 cents can be like 1 cent or a tenth of a cent or something.
Yeah, so I never actually thought about the use case of like, let's go back to the sports bet and like them in somebody else. I never actually thought about that because like you can do the two-way channel with like what Satoshi described as like end sequence channels.
Yeah.
And I think that's not really something that we use now. But being able to loop in somebody else, like I'll have to actually think about that because then, you have like a platform if you want to, send if every single time you get a like, you get some sats or something, right? That would, like, you can't even send like 100 sats on chain. Like you can only send like 546. I just wrote a tweet about that. And so, yeah, that's really interesting. Like, cause with like an end sequence channel, that doesn't matter. Or like just a regular, just two-way looping in somebody else. Yeah, I never really actually thought about that. So give me some food for thought.
Yeah. And like with the Twitter, like, I guess, use case, Twitter can gain some routing fees on top of that. They can like literally let people send sats super cheap, but they take a little routing fee, and then that can actually be a good enough business because of the sheer volume of like sending things back and forth. And then it just makes sense to have that capital sunk because you need, in order to let everyone have everyone receive Twitter on $100, you have to have 100 times 220 or so million. It's a lot of money in this big pot. So in order to make money back on that, you'd have to kind of do that. But anyway, I guess the point is Lightning, for like every time you go to a merchant, you're like starting a new relationship with them, basically. And it just on-chain transaction to open a channel, or just everyone's connected to some big centralized hub. It's just a nightmare. So Drivechains basically merge mine a sidechain into Bitcoin and allow for easy-ish bridging. So basically, instead of using, like, if you want your stupid 1 megabyte Bitcoin or whatever, you can still have it. And if you want the Bitcoin Cash, you can just bridge it over, and it takes, you can use a swap service or something, and you get Bitcoin that's redeemable for the other one, so the value would be the same, right? The same hash rate, not just the algorithm, but the same miners are securing both chains because it's merge mined. And so you don't have to worry about this one not being secure. And then if this thing goes kaput, like, the main chain is still fine. So it's like the ultimate win-win-win-win-win. And the argument is it's not only good for Bitcoin, but it's also an alt killer. And I think the alt killer argument is more of a 2015, 16, 17 argument. It's definitely not a today argument.
I don't think it applies today at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would kill some, but anyway, it seems like what I think is fascinating is you're creating a new civil war, because the big blockers all kind of left, right? They all went off to, Bitcoin Cash. They went off to, like, a lot of them just went off to Ethereum, just even though Ethereum's kind of a little bit of a small blocker zone these days too, which is a little sad, but like,
engineer Ethereum is interesting technology. So
yeah, so you just go to all this, the losers of the block size war all left pretty much. I mean, I would say entirely. And then now the people who are remaining, the people who wanted to do other cool things on Bitcoin, also left because they kind of got pushed out, like the sats, like the NFT people, ordinal people, some of them are being pushed out. So now it's like the maxi group is getting smaller, and now they seem to be split down the middle about Drivechains, because Drivechains is the ultimate zero risk sidechain type thing. But because it didn't come out of like the Taproot, Schnorr, whatever the hell kind of that stuff, it's kind of taboo and adding shitcoins to Bitcoin. But surprisingly, a lot of toxic maxi people are supporting them. Let me hit this Vlad's. I just see him on Twitter, so I don't exactly know who this dude is. Let me look what it says. Bitcoin Takeover Podcast or whatever. Anyway, he put this big thing about, like, this big salty post about, Drivechains, Bitcoin's already perfect while we have all these wonderful custodians. So what if they sometimes steal? At least clients can sue them and get some fiat back after 10 years. In the meantime, I'll virtue signal to the exchange users and tell them that they should all withdraw into cold storage after steak dinner with Saifedean. It doesn't matter if they wouldn't have afforded transaction fees during a bank run. I'm already a first-class citizen in the Bitcoin network, and everyone else is below me and therefore stupid. Like, all this kind of stuff. I did not expect this person to be on team Drivechain, because it's kind of like the good one. And then the actual pull request for BIP 300, which is the Drivechain one, was done by the smallest of bloggers, Luke Dash Jr.'s. And he was literally paid to write it up. By the way, he's a 300 kilobyte blocker, right? Unironically, which is just, I'm not going to address any of that in this moment. But he said Drivechains were arguably a good idea back in 2017 with the risk of BCH splitting off, but that ship sailed a long time ago. I don't think there's a point now. He says, yes, Layer 2 Labs is funding my work on the Drivechain code. The code /PR is not an endorsement of it. Many Bitcoin devs receive funding like that, blah, blah, blah. And then Adam, okay, well, let's just stop there and then go on. So I'm sure you've heard of Luke Jr. before, right?
Yeah. Hey, Luke, if you're listening, unblock me. I promise I won't troll you.
Listen, say for a month. You gotta, like, you might troll him again eventually, because
if he deserves to get trolled, I'll troll him. But, like, I don't even know why he blocked me in the first place. I didn't do anything.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think that Luke Jr. is one of those people who I don't necessarily believe was a bad actor. I just think he's
eccentric, that's for sure.
He's very set in his strange idea ways, for sure. And so he has some of the, in my opinion, some of the least sensical ideas. However, uh, not too long ago, like within the last few months, he lost like all his Bitcoin. He got hacked, and then I guess Layer 2 Labs paid him because he's a talented developer. Again, the ideas he has are not the fruit of talent, but apparently the actual writing of code is, he does have talent for that.
Yeah.
And so he wrote up, I guess, just, it's like a paid service, right? But he actually says it's not an endorsement, but he also says he doesn't unendorse. He says they're like, Drive chains seem interesting, just maybe 2017 was a much better time for them, which I agree with him on that. But then the other voices in this. So I didn't have a good tweet for that, but I'll just put up this Adam Back one about side chains, blah, 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 economic game theory about drive chains, whatever. But Adam Back, again, CEO of Blockstream, kind of two big blockers, sort of the devil incarnate right there, he's not he's not pro drive train, but he's definitely not anti either at this point. And I'm just like, I was expecting him to lead the charge against it, but he's not. So either one of two things. Either he is holding back so that he can pretend to be impartial and then be a respected voice to really kill drive chains, or he's just honestly like wouldn't mind them. I don't know. What's your bet on that one?
I think Adam is really good at playing social games.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to seem like he's going to have this balanced and reasonable viewpoint while continuing to just kind of sow this like uncertainty and dissent.
Mm-hmm.
Like what Haldenaut is now saying are like the 80 IQ plebs, right? That's what Paul is up against right now, are 80 IQ plebs, right? And Adam can just say some wizard nonsense that sounds technical, and just say it in his little lowercase style, nonchalant. Oh yeah, I don't really have a stake here, but oh, here's my opinion anyway. And it's just like, it's just all it has to do is just do that constantly and not actually make any progress, and throw sand in the gears, and everybody else will just like hold up the development on his behalf. And so again, going back to the kind of the conspiracy thinking, I definitely believe that Blockstream was never a good actor. That's my personal belief, and whether that's true or not, we can't really tell, but that is my personal belief. So I don't think that Blockstream really has the interests of Bitcoin at heart, and Adam, being the CEO of Blockstream, probably does not have the actual interests of Bitcoin at heart. And I feel like that's very well demonstrated by the block size war, and I think that's very well demonstrated now.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of crazy to see how this, as far as thing has gone. Let me hit on Jameson Lopp, who I guess he was kind of like he's one of the people who debated Roger Ver, so he's like a big old maxi, but he runs, I think he runs Casa Hodl, which is like a multi-sig semi-custodian, I guess, that like helps you have an extra layer of security in case your Bitcoin gets stolen. They can help you get it back, or it's kind of like but they can't rug you either. It's just like a security solution, and they were always super maxi. In fact, a lot of people had little Casa Lightning node. They used to sell little pocket Lightning node thingies and stuff, and like all this stuff. Anyway, they started supporting Ethereum custody because there was a market demand. And then they got excommunicated from the maxis. So even though Jameson Lopp is kind of a maxi, he's also kind of been excommunicated from the maxi group. And so as such, he's just he retweeted this Eric Wall post that was like a pretty good compilation video about everyone talking about two-way pegged side chains that are merge mined with Bitcoin in 2015, i.e. drive chains, right? And he says, sometimes I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Then I remember few folks were paying attention 10 years ago. It's a disappointing narrative shift. Maximalism back then. All crypto finance will be anchored to Bitcoin. Maximalism today. Meh, nobody wants that. And this is where, like, I think that the maxi cult has kind of taken over on its own. Like, back then, maximalism was a lot of people were soft maxis. They were like, I really just care about Bitcoin. But the shitcoins are distraction, that kind of thing. But like not in a non-aggressive way. And then they got turned aggressive to win the block size war. But then the everything will be priced in Bitcoin and anchored to Bitcoin became nothing can exist other than L1 and just like hand wave away all the problems and stuff. And that's been kind of an interesting thing to see. But again, another big voice in that camp, in the drive chain camp, kind of. And so, but do you think because he's excommunicado John Wick, because he's out of the thing, do you think that now doesn't matter anymore?
I mean, Lop's just kind of an interesting case because he's always had like overall pretty decent points of view on everything.
Even
And
though
so
I've disagreed with
like
him a lot.
flash when I see something like what you just showed, and then I go, well, that's where we are on BCH now. Like with cash tokens, like we now have the tools to absorb all of global finance. So when I read that, I'm like, hey, Lop, you're a smart guy. How come you don't do this?
Yeah. And I think it's just it all goes to like the original thing about like running a node, right? Everyone should be able to run a node is the kind of the kind of thing that is the underpinning of literally all of BTC today, and a little bit of ETH too, because every time, obviously ETH has scaling, much more realistic scaling limits than Bitcoin, right? Because the transactions are just much more data intensive. Everything is much more data intensive. And also there's a lot more, like there's millions of these super intensive transactions as opposed to like a few 100,000 of much smaller transactions on Bitcoin. But a lot of the excuse of like why you can't raise the gas limit, i.e. block size, has been, well, we shouldn't because not everyone will be able to run a node and decentralization. There's the same kind of shit that's going into ETH now, the same kind of thinking a little bit. But I guess that point is, to a certain extent, I don't think that everyone, all the old maxis, will ever go into the Bitcoin Cash side. Some will, obviously, at the end. Whatever wins out, right? And then people flock towards winners. But just because of the run a node thing, it's like, well, if you have to scale infinitely, you're going to have these like BSV style nodes.
Right. I think that argument is fundamentally flawed, though.
I agree.
Right now, literally that same Raspberry Pi that's running Bitcoin Core can run Bitcoin Cash ScaleNet with gigabyte blocks. No problem. We've already proven this like 3 years ago. So it's just a fundamentally flawed argument. That was 3 years ago. Okay, so there's been economic problems. Like I don't know if there's been like major upgrades to Raspberry in those amount of years, but okay, so come up on 2024, right? Maybe a new generation of Raspberry Pi comes out. Maybe it's twice as fast as the last generation of Raspberry Pi, right? And,
yeah, what is it, Moore's law about the economic scaling of things?
And that's from the beginning how we anticipated Bitcoin to scale. So BSV people come and like love to troll me. Oh yeah, haha, small block Bitcoin Cash because y'all can't even do 4 gigabyte blocks. And it's like, dude, there is no reason to have a 4 gigabyte block right now. Period.
Like, what are you going to fill it with right now?
Dog pics, and that's what they do, and that's why BSV is dead.
Yeah, I mean, I have been deep into the BSV world recently, but it does seem I do. The real thing I watch is like consistent transaction volume, but also like fee, right? Total fee. And that's something that literally nothing that isn't like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and a couple others has reasonably. And like at some point, like I think you really need to start hitting some strides before you start printing that anyway. But the whole like everyone's using, like, you don't know that. Yeah. Yeah, but it is. I'm never going to criticize BSV for doing what they're doing with the scaling thing, because I mean, if I will criticize them for saying it's something that it's not, but someone needs to be pushing these upper bounds and someone needs to be doing it the wrong way too, which they might be doing, right?
Yeah.
And just so you know, oh, this is what happens when you do this. This is what happens when you do that. And like, okay, we proved this. And yeah, I just think it's every it pushes the Overton window that way, which is fine. Um, but
I mean,
so
I fully agree with that because you look at BSV, they're pushing those upper bounds, and so we can learn from that. We learn kind of what not to do or what the limits are, and then also I have a similar respect for BTC
hmm
because they're like speed running the end game for us. It's like because my personal belief is that we are definitely going to have payment channels. You need that for like streaming payments. You need that for like
hmm
machine learning economy. I saw an article written by somebody. I think it might actually be a BSVer, but it was written in like 2017 about terabyte blocks for Bitcoin Cash.
hmm
And it was actually a pretty interesting article because it's basically saying, okay, what's the actual end game here? Let's do the math. And
hmm
it turns out, based on that math in 2017, like there would have been no problem for us to support that like economically.
yeah, and it's the problem. Like this is the other thing though. By the way, is I think in 2015, 2016, or whatever, I could have been persuaded. I don't know if I could call me being a maxi, but a Bitcoin majorist for sure. If with drive chains, it's just like, all right, well, you can any functionality, you can just do that. You can keep the same token, and I'd be like, I don't care about all these alts. But even if that can happen today, or on any chain, right? I'm never gonna be like one coiner entirely. Because I think that a lot of stuff has to get out there and lose
Hmm.
before we find out what works. It's just like, why would you be like a McDonald's maxi? It's just like, well, there's McDonald's, Burger King too. It's like, yeah, but this is better. Okay, but like, I really want there to be a Wendy's that comes and fails. I really want a Whataburger out there that comes and fails too. I want the In-N-Out, the Shake Shack, you know, everything. I want everything to be thrown at the wall and see what lives and see what gets absorbed and see what dies. Because otherwise we're really in a bad spot. And so, unfortunately, Bitcoin and Ethereum together are like 70% of the space or more if you include all the tokens and things that are built on them, mostly Ethereum. So if those two die, crypto is just like taken back to 2017 era, maybe in terms of, or before that, in terms of like market cap and stuff. So
Well,
it's,
that's really a bad thing.
well, yeah, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a hard speed bump to hit today. By the
Yeah.
time we hit it, I think that first off, either one of the two may evolve. I'm doubtful, but it may. But also, like I hope that they fail slow enough to where people start to see more and more people start to see the failure on the horizon and start to like try other things.
I think that's happening with BTC right now. I don't think Ethereum's really had its heyday yet. I think people are like
Mm-hmm.
content to like cope with the gas problem because you do really have actually decently viable L2 scaling on Ethereum. And I mean, I also don't believe that L2 scaling is viable just like in principle because, okay, well, if I'm using
Yeah,
Polygon to scale Ethereum, then I'm not using Ethereum anymore. I'm using Polygon. But
yeah,
that's not really the argument I'm making right now. I'm just saying like Ethereum, I think, has a better shot of surviving for longer compared to BTC. And if BTC were to just collapse right now, I mean, it might be arrogant, but I think people will just come over to mostly Ethereum, but also Bitcoin Cash,
yeah,
some trick Litecoin, but I think Litecoin is kind of deflating pretty rapidly right now as well.
yeah. I think,
And then Monero, I just is always forever unspoken, always will be like a number two. But in my mind, the future is Bitcoin Cash and Monero, and then whatever other experiments happen on top of that. Because then again, there's cash tokens, which can
mm-hmm,
fill a similar role to drive chains on BTC. You can make a similar argument where it's like, hey guys, we can put shit coins on Bitcoin Cash. We can literally do that today, and
mm-hmm,
you can do all of your experiments there. We can have a two-way peg. In fact, I am pretty sure the cash tokens and introspection technologies are what's going to allow the Bitcoin Cash to Monero atomic swaps to actually
mm-hmm.
happen. There's a bounty out for that. So developers, if you want to make some BCH and some Monero, like go check out that bounty. And yeah, I just that's what I see the future looking like. And then in the meantime, I think that there's kind of a lot to be said about the state of the market currently.
Mm-hmm.
I think the whole SEC versus Binance thing going on right now is very ominous. I think that's one of the primary drivers of price action for most coins right now, on top of the BlackRock stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's getting pretty crazy. The thing is, it's kind of funny to see like the failure deltas of everything. So the Bitcoin failure delta is, I guess, twofold. One, it's no one's using it, right? No one can use it really. So, and it's not just like custodial stuff, because yeah, that's a problem too. But it's like, I think it's more than being like, oh well, everyone's going to use Bitcoin, but it'll be centralized and the government controls. Okay, that's not even the problem yet. That could be the problem. The problem is no one's using it to begin with. Like, there's no value proposition in using this thing other than something else if you have to use it through the same old legacy rails as everything else. But then the other bigger problem is the entire thing, the security model, is inherently based on, again in the Bitcoin white paper, on reducing fees, reducing inflation, and hoping that, fees go up to compensate. And as much as so I'd like to be conciliatory towards the store value people and say, okay, maybe Bitcoin was invented as something different, but now it's the store of value. I'm willing to accept that is, even though that's not something I'm super interested in. However, it was designed for peer-to-peer electronic cash. And if you don't use it as such, you have to change the model some way, because otherwise it's going to crash. Because having security model goes down, without fees to come up, people will only pay so much for Bitcoin transaction, is going to fail structurally as a network. Whereas gold doesn't fail. It just, the gold is there. But your Bitcoin could become worthless someday if the network goes down. So living gold, And so that's Bitcoin's problems they're hitting much sooner. Ethereum seems to be doing more than fine, except for the centralization. There's two vectors. The big one is a centralization vector where it's so hard to use Ethereum on L1. So people use L2s and they're all like ruggable with multi-sigs, and you can just, you can like Polygon's 5 of 8 multi-sig, mostly controlled by, bless you, by the founders and stuff. Like at that point it becomes, that's why CBDCs and stuff are starting to like pop up, like PayPal's doing their stuff on Ethereum, all that kind of stuff, because they're like, you know what, we can control this. That's their number one thing. And as another number two, just like the fragmentation of user experience of having to bridge from all these L2s and stuff like that. If there's a single chain that just does all the Ethereum stuff and you don't have to just jump around and which one am I using today? Like all that stuff, like when you look at like a payment option, it's just like, all right, we accept Tether. Okay, even if it's only Tether, they're like, oh, Tether, and then Ethereum, and then there's Polygon and Arbitrum, and then Tron, and then blah, blah, blah. It's just like, oh, no one wants this, right? So, and that's just the ETH ecosystem. We're not even talking about like Solana and other things like that, and Tron, and, So, it's the Bitcoin failure thing is, of course, hitting the centralization thing, or the Lightning one. Lightning, in a decentralized way, was tried kind of, but failed. Just no one's going to use that. The only way that stuck is centralized, and now we're having people getting rugged. So let me put up this tweet. Tree of Alpha, whoever this is, says, I just found out I have $2,000 on Blue Wallet, which is a non-custodial Bitcoin wallet that had a custodial Lightning element. And anyway, on Blue Wallet, that is as good as gone because the devs discontinued their Lightning node, and I didn't check up on it in the last 6 months. Crypto UX stays winning. We're going to go to mass adoption of this for sure. And that the top tweet comment there on my feed, at least, is from some guy called Kallisti.cast saying, hate to say I told you so, or we told you so. And then, all the, it's funny, like, this is definitely a Bitcoin Cash shill fest in the comments here. It's like, use BCH from Omar, and then Bitcoin Jason. And, that's like, you have to go pretty far down before you start to find non-BCH people in here.
Are you sure that's not because of your followers? You got to go on incognito and look at what that looks like.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it is, but it is kind of a fun thing to see.
Okay, so honestly though, I mean, Bitcoin cashers have been doing really good on like ratioing people lately. It's kind of crazy. I mean, it's definitely been a steady trickle of like engagement on BCH related posts and like, but I mean, my mindset on that, when I started like actually getting kind of popular on Twitter, it's like, my mindset is like, oh, if I hit that like button, it's like a beacon. All of the other Bitcoin cashers are going to come in and like back me up if I hit this button right now. And that's kind of what's been happening. So now it's like there are so many of us, like we can't really be ignored anymore. And it's interesting. I mean, people are reacting to that and have been reacting to that more. And to me, that's awesome. To other people, I feel like we might be threatening them a little bit. Oops.
Yeah. So, um, Litecoin Underground has some interesting comments in the live chat. I'll let those be as we continue, but it might be interesting to jump on that later. But the funny thing is, I think as far as just like the Twitter wars type thing, in terms of everything, in terms of, I guess, like drama, narrative, price, everything, Bitcoin Cash definitely bottomed. It just hit the bottom, and now I think that's that's it. That's the bottom, and so now there's no like further down you can. I mean, there's always like it could go to zero, but for the moment it's a bottom, right? And so now it's just like when you're commenting, now all it is victory lap season, because Bitcoin has a lot of downside, BTC has a lot of downside, and so BCH can nip at the heels and say, we told you so, this thing doesn't work, this thing doesn't work, and then you can't come up with any new like, ooh, look at the price chart, well, we've already been down there, it's fine. Or like, look at, no one's using it, well, it's not fewer people than last time you said it, it's, in fact, there's some growth, okay, well then no one, whatever drama, they all forked off, they're gone. Well, and it's just like, so it's like a solid building spot, and so now it's kind of interesting to see like the narrative shift, but it's still like the Bitcoiners still have that, oh, we got more market cap and attention than everyone else. And it's like, yeah, sure, for now, let's just watch it. But the Lightning thing is kind of interesting because just like a custodial service, like, and that wasn't even like a rug. It was just we're discontinuing it. We're going to close it out. And if you're using something like Phoenix, for example, and the async node decides that we're going to stop doing this, isn't profitable, and they shut down, everyone can just import that same seed phrase now after like the couple weeks or however long it takes to do the closing transaction. You can just import it into whatever wallet you can, and now you have your Bitcoin back minus the closing fees or whatever. And it's like, you don't get rugged. You just like, your ability to spend it easily gets rugged. Let's be honest about that. But you don't get rugged. But if you have a custodial solution, especially if it's a no KYC thing, so you don't have a way to give like a legal right to stuff, it's gone. It's gone. There was a video that some maxis were dunking on by a friend of mine who I think works at Casa, and he's an actual super OG Bitcoiner, because he posted a video of himself either in 2010 or 2011 buying a salad with Bitcoin in New York, like way back in the day. Like we're talking, super cheap. I don't know if Bitcoin was over $1 yet at the time. I don't even remember, but it was like way back in the day. People were like, look at this idiot. They weren't quite that mean. And also he's kind of a maxi, but they're kind of like, look at that. But he said, hey, funny story. There weren't any good light wallets for Bitcoin back then. So I used this one to pay on my phone, and it was like a custodial wallet. And then I ended up getting rugged and lost all my Bitcoin on the wallet, because that was like the early days when it's super Wild West and there just wasn't infra to like do things properly like today. But it kind of like reminds me of the same thing of like, there's a difference between getting rugged if you have your money in Voyager or Strike or something like that, versus rugged on like Blue Wallet or Wallet of Satoshi. Like Wallet of Satoshi could just freaking disappear on you and take all your money. And you just can't be like, oh, I'm going to sue them. Well, who? You mean like, I don't know, duckface509 at hotmail.com or whatever you signed up as? Like, come on. Like, oh, I have legal right to this. Like, show me. Where is it? There was no
terms of service that said no, you don't, honestly.
Yeah, I haven't read through the terms of service, but like, I'm pretty sure you would have no legal recourse of like, hey, I'm the guy behind this email. Okay, prove it. Oh, well, it's like, and if it's not it just would get super messy. And so that's kind of, Lightning either becomes a fully custodial, like a fully KYC custodial thing, which just like use Coinbase or whatever. I don't know. Well, you don't have to be Lightning. Or it becomes this weird zone of ruggable, no KYC custodial stuff,
Well, the
which is
thing about Lightning
brutal.
Network is you can actually have multiple Lightning networks also.
Hmm.
Uh, you could just have a pirate Lightning network that is no KYC. It just wouldn't have any connection to like the KYC network.
Hmm.
But it's just like if I want to use BitTorrent for something, some other P2P protocol to find my files versus I don't know, finding them on some other file listing site. I don't know. In Netflix, I guess, right? I want to download a movie.
Yeah. It's so. Um, Let me hit on this one from Brian Harrington. Do you know Brian Harrington?
Yeah, he's the CEO of Coin. No, that's Armstrong.
No.
Harrington is just another maxi, right?
Yeah, but he's in the same camp as like Esteban and stuff, in that they're Bitcoin people, but they're like mass adoption maxis more than anything. They're like good people, and
Yeah,
so
I've seen that guy around.
yeah, he's a great dude. But he says he posts this thing about like apparently Bitcoin is being bridged to wrapped Bitcoin faster than it's being mined into existence.
Oh wow.
And so that was this tweet. And so he says he quote tweeted whoever posted that. Well, actually, that and now that I'm looking at that, the thing that he quoted was from 2020. So I don't know if that's still the case today. Probably not. But I know there's more wrapped Bitcoin than there is in Lightning today. At least I've heard that secondhand. I haven't checked that out. But he says, turns out that Ethereum is Bitcoin's most used L2. Takes some humility and deep product introspection to think about. So as a Bitcoin maxi type person, you saying that like it is what it is, That's the biggest L2. I would argue that the most used payment L2 for Bitcoin is Litecoin. Shout out to Litecoin Underground in the comments. But it's true, like it's the real Lightning Network because hundreds of thousands of people use it per day. Every time congestion gets bad on BTC, you see a big spike in Litecoin transactions. You don't really see that in Lightning. And I don't know if you see on ETH stuff because ETH is how you wrapped Bitcoin is how you somehow pay even more for moving your Bitcoin than you would if you just used Bitcoin, It's like awful.
I think people use wrapped Bitcoin just for like DeFi type stuff, right? It's like, okay, well, I want to, the predominant thinking, if I want to borrow against my Bitcoin, well, you can do that in a DeFi way, wrap it onto Ethereum. It's kind of funny though. You've got like this inception of like L2s, like which is the real L2, right? If Ethereum is an L2 to Bitcoin, and then Polygon is an L2 to Ethereum,
Yeah.
like where's it going with this?
It's like the Russian dolls, just like
Yeah.
just goes down, 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 down. Well, I mean, that's where it starts getting like really crazy because from my mind, let's just say, just something I pulled out of my butt real quick is L1 of whatever you use is like, let's say 80% of all the usage is like L1. Like 80% of what you do is L1. And then the 20% special cases is for little L2s here and there, right? So, yeah, it's just, if you have an L2 on an L2 kind of thing, that's where you know that's like an actual problem, Let's see, what was the next thing we had? So now we're talking about, so this is just like the whole Bitcoin scaling solutions that were touted in the block size war have not come to fruition. They haven't really worked. Other coins have ended up scaling Bitcoin. And now the Drivechains is like a re-attempt at like, let's finally get something that keeps the Bitcoin standard running that like, but also actually works. And struggling. And we see the failure of, again, not the failure of Lightning to do things, but the failure of Lightning to be like the payment layer.
Promises at least.
Yeah, to fulfill. I even struggle to say that it's the promise because fulfill the promise of people pushing it as an excuse to not scale L1 for sure. But now we're saying like, well, it's still like the most ultrasound. No, that's an Ethereum term. Sorry, the most. I get lost in all these terms. The most sound money the world's ever seen, super decentralized, there is no second best, like all that kind of stuff. But then we have BlackRock, which people are celebrating, right? And just hit on this. So Watcher Guru, who annoys the crap out of me on Twitter, but does end up being a big source for a lot of stuff, says BlackRock is a major shareholder in 4 out of the 5 largest Bitcoin mining companies. So Riot, Marathon, Cypher, Hut 8, and TeraWolf. And in all of these, basically, it's the number 2 shareholder according to this, right? And so BlackRock is also controls like the whole financial system of the world. Not quite, but it's
For all intents.
it's pretty crazy how much they control, and they may get the first like Bitcoin ETF, right? They might actually get it approved. I don't think it's. I'm pretty sure it's not like for sure, but if anyone's going to get them, it's going to be them. It's not going to be, Grayscale, who again successfully sued the SEC or won in court against the SEC, but still don't have their ETF. But so it's not only going to be BlackRock's going to be a major holder of Bitcoin to where if they want to do stuff with the price, it's a big sway, but also they're owning part of like a good chunk of the issuance of Bitcoin. And more importantly, of these large mining pools, these block producers, right? If they are the number 2 shareholder, even if it's not number 1 yet, if they're a big enough shareholder in all of these mining pools, if they're one of their most significant shareholders says, listen, we're going to divest from you and invest in the other pool if you don't start filtering these transactions to make our shareholders happy, they're probably going to bow to that. It's not like you don't have to literally it's like the 51% attack thing. It's not like an 80% attack. It's like 51%. And all you have to do is like you have to control enough or have enough influence to get those people, those actors, like even if there's 4 mining pools, 25% each. You have to get the 25% one and the 26% one. You have to be a loud enough voice to convince those two, and then all of a sudden the whole network can kind of get compromised. So that's kind of where we're inching towards, where China, at least when all Bitcoin mining basically was done in China, at least that was like, well, the Chinese control that stuff. But then a lot of the companies and the infrastructure and the development stuff is more, I guess, US and Western Europe. And it's like, okay, well, at least there's a balance of power. Then with the China ban, everyone's like, yeah, that's great. See, look, it's all in Texas now and other like, okay, but then like literally the dollar, which runs the world. Sorry,
Huh?
false alarm. Almost had a big old sneeze there. But the issuer of the dollar now controls for all intents and purposes controls Bitcoin now, kind of, or is heading that direction. So now you're like, okay, well, isn't Bitcoin supposed to be a against the dollar? And then El Salvador, which ran on the dollar, still mostly does now, like running on the Bitcoin. And I mean, I don't want to delude myself in saying that this was avoidable, kind of. Like, of course, if any crypto becomes a global money, a lot of the same global powers who own the last one will have some sort of a stake in the new one. I don't think you can avoid that at all. But I do think that this is still a little concerning of just how much of it some entities connected to old power structures in the largest, most powerful country in the world, economically speaking, right? I think it is a little concerning. I don't know if you'd agree on that.
I think it's concerning on paper, but I think in the long term, it probably isn't actually a problem just because of the nature of mining. Like the BlackRock still has to come up with the energy to run the miners. Like there's still a commodity backing both the dollar and these miners, right? You have to find the coal or the gas or just whatever energy source, and that's not free. So even if, let's say, BlackRock controls 60% of all of Bitcoin miners in the US, or just like 60% of the hash rate in general, right? Even then, the risk is like reorg type stuff, and they still have to pay for that. So I think the incentives still line up such that BlackRock would rather just make the money. And if they want to mess with the price to make some money, they can just sell Bitcoin, or they can, I don't know, do something because maybe they value USD more than Bitcoin. But honestly, BlackRock also isn't stupid, right? As far or they're a private entity. They're not a government entity, so they can do kind of whatever they want.
Yeah, of
They're
course.
not burdened by all of the process that goes on in the government. So when people think, oh yeah, the government's super incompetent, like nothing's ever going to happen, BlackRock isn't in that umbrella. If they own all of these assets, they control all of these assets. There is, I guess, kind of I have kind of opposing views on this, like slightly conflicting. But in terms of Bitcoin, I just think that it's not as bad as it looks. I think that there's still massive economic implications to them actually being able to, like, say, censor transactions because hash rate can just move elsewhere. And this is exactly what happened. Okay, China tried to ban Bitcoin mining, and what happened? They all just went to like Kazakhstan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing to see in practice, and I really hope we see it. Just kind of like the MEV boost thing with Ethereum, where was it flash bots or whatever. It's a bunch of crap that like no one needs to really fully understand. But the point is, a lot of like OFAC censored addresses and stuff were transactions there. Like for example, Tornado Cash were filtered from like something like the majority of Ethereum blocks at one point, to where that means you could still get it through, but it would take like 3 times as long to get a censored transaction through the Ethereum network. And then that's because people are largely on autopilot. And then they started to, let me see if I can find the site. Dot info. There we go. Post merge, the OFAC compliant blocks were up to 78% at its peak, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now, as of like right now, they're down to 52%, and they bottomed after the peak at what, 17% at one point. But like, as you can see, let me actually put that on the screen, because I think it's an important kind of thing to show like how things work in practice. And this is just because, you know, because whoever was kind of doing this, it just was more profitable to use this one service that happened to be censoring these transactions. And so, yeah, mevwatch.info if you want to look at it yourself. But then there was an outcry, oh, I'll assume censorship. So then a lot of blocks started moving to other providers, and that kind of like dipped out a little bit. And so there was something similar that happened. I forget which Bitcoin mining pool it was, but a few years ago they started also censoring and stuff. And there just happened to be a big enough of an outcry that they just had to back off, and then there you go. So I don't know. I mean, I think it'd be perfectly feasible for all BlackRock controlled. Let's say they're controlled. They're not controlled. They're influenced right now. They're not controlled. But let's just say a lot of in the future they were controlled. BlackRock controlled pools. All of them decided to start censoring certain spicy transactions. If it was like a small enough revenue thing, you wouldn't really need to mine. You wouldn't really be like, well, hash rate's going to go elsewhere, because it doesn't necessarily make sense to go elsewhere for just those few transactions or whatever. But the big thing is, in a fee market, as Satoshi, not you, Craig, as Satoshi intended, it does make it so that like you're literally paying customers. You're saying no to paying customers, and whoever says yes to them is going to make a lot of money. But if fees just don't make that much money on the network, if it's all inflation, or in the future, if it's all subsidies for something else, because a lot of maxis are talking about, oh, it's just like environmental thingies for repurposing energy, or like blah, 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 these other volcano energy, whatever it is, as in not the network itself making mining profitable. Mining being profitable for external uses, like heating your house or whatever. You're going to heat your house regardless of transactions, right? And so the fee model discourages censorship, because paying customers will always have someone willing to take their money. But if mostly paying customers aren't your customer, if your customer is whoever is subsidizing the unprofitable Bitcoin network because you don't make enough in fees, those people run Bitcoin, and that's it. So,
Well, they eventually run out of money, and then the hash rate goes offline, and everything is right in the world after that. So that's why I'm saying long term, I think the economic implications, like the Bitcoin incentives just work as intended.
To a certain extent, and then until the hash rate gets low enough to where, in order to keep it secure, like a government entity can subsidize it indefinitely, taxpayer money. They can subsidize basically half or all the network entirely, and just they run it. And if there's no fees, if there's no like fees competing to get the hash rate back up again, like, oh, the fee, like business is booming, the fees are going up, now all of a sudden the government has to shell out tons of money, and no, people are going to be like, nah, we're not going to listen to you because we can make more just not censoring transactions and just getting fees.
Yeah.
That's when the whole model works. So like a big block Bitcoin works that way.
We're in the U.S. and the inflation is like not great. People are actually struggling. There's probably going to be major like economic and like credit events that happen within the next like 6 months. Like everyone that I know, like all my friends, everyone that I know is like, oh, we don't know what's going to happen. Everything is so expensive, and we're not making enough money. Like who's got jobs that are paying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the government, it does not have infinite money, because eventually you just ruin the national economy.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't keep subsidizing that forever. And then again, the even if you had 51% plus hash rate, the risk is the reorg risk. It's not even so much like double spend. It's like that your transaction just gets bumped out of a block entirely,
Mm-hmm.
or that it doesn't exist in any other mempool ever. So you really have to break Bitcoin, not just mining, but on the node level also. You have to break transaction propagation in order for this to actually affect users at the end of the day, because of how zero-conf works. As long as you respect the first seen rule, and as long as all of the transactions that are chained together like are valid, they do follow the rules, even if they're not in a block. You can chain 1 million transactions together, and as long as that Merkle proof checks out, it's fine. It'll eventually get mined. It takes a year to mine. That whole transaction chain will still be valid, and then none of those transactions were censored. I could do it right here with my S9 in my room, and it might take like a whole year to solo mine a block, but it'll still happen.
Yeah. And so, like the original design, again, I'm starting to sound like a BS now, but like the original design does work pretty solidly. Just before we hit on the grayscale thing and wrap up, I did Litecoin Underground was making some interesting points in the live chat, kind of off topic a little bit, but not really, about like fee revenue, and basically how like in congestion is the only case where a fee market just develops and stuff. And there's a little bit of like it's a kind of yes but kind of no.
There's limits to both.
Yeah.
Because
so
on the top end, the fee is going to be so high that activity is going to move off to a different chain. On the low end, there's not enough security budget.
Yeah. And like, for example, right now, nearly every single cryptocurrency that's not Bitcoin, Ethereum, some of the ETH L2s, possibly Solana, I don't know what they're doing, like Avalanche and maybe something else. Like there's, other than those few, everything is like small fractions of a cent to send. But it's practically free, right, to send. And what this means is even when you have like Litecoin had like 600 plus thousand transactions for a few days, when the ordinals or the BRC20 boom was happening on Bitcoin, and they just couldn't get stuff in, so they started doing the Litecoin version. And Litecoin fee revenue did not get that high, maybe a couple of grand, like a few grand for the day, and that's it, which is not sustainable, because the fees themselves are very, very low. And so, like, let's say like Bitcoin SV does like, millions a day, I guess. Depends on if they have the will to pump the numbers that day or not. I know it fluctuates based on that, but like you could have many millions of transactions, which isn't that bad. But the fee revenue is like $12 for the whole day or something. It's like nothing. Now, obviously that's not sustainable. And yes, one thing that jacks up the fees is when all of a sudden you hit a ceiling, and then people have to start bidding to get in higher in the block space. However, you can remain under an unconstricted block size. You can still jack up overall fee revenue while keeping fees low to not have a fee market. First of all, you can program in like a base minimum fee or something. Some projects do that. And so it's just like, okay, you got to pay at least 1/10 of a cent. And then it's just like, okay, well then there's this giant chunk of like, there's at least this much you can make. But also one thing that started happening on BSV, which again, I said before, I love BSV because it just, they do all this stuff that doesn't really make any sense, but I learn stuff from when they do it. And I'm just like, oh, okay, I get that. There was a miner, they're trying to like, again, in a futile attempt to pump the price of the coin by vanity metrics, they're trying to pump more and more transactions out. And I think one miner, or like a third of the hash rate, or the majority miner, is like a significant miner, that's all I remember, started refusing to put all transactions below a certain fee into blocks at all. They're just like, dude, if you're not going to pay at least this much, we're not going to process your transaction at all. And it wasn't very high. They just didn't want to, like, for a 100th of a cent, like like a whole JPEG or something. Like they just were tired of doing that because it it costs money to do all this. It actually costs money for them to do this, and if they're not getting paid, well, there you go. So under these, like at some point, let's just say, okay, you think Bitcoin Cash isn't profitable right now, fine. But at some point, miners could just be like, you know what? We are going to automatically set a thing where every transaction has to pay at least a half a cent, or every payment, or I mean, I don't know how the data transactions are going to end up working as far as cost, but they could just put, or say, a tenth of a cent. It's a tenth of a cent, or we won't include it in blocks. And then just enough miners start doing that, and then all of a sudden the fee revenue goes way up on the entire network, but it's still very low for the individual user. And then even though the block size can still fill more and more and more, the actual revenue that gets sent to miners kind of keeps going up, and you have a healthy fee growth. And of course that grows with the hash rate, et cetera, et cetera. So that's one way that whole thing could change. But it's just that, like, nothing in crypto right now is running as it would sustainably run long term, in my opinion.
Yeah, we're still in this kind of mid game. I mean, even on Bitcoin and on Bitcoin Cash and all of our siblings, there is the minimum relay fee. So on everyone except for BSV, the minimum relay fee is 1 sat per byte. So
Nice.
that's what you get your 546 sat dust limit. You can't send anything lower than that because it'll cost more than the 1 sat per byte to actually send that, and you won't have any money. So we just donate it to the miners instead.
Well, speaking of donate, Johnny O just sent a super chat. Thank you very much. He didn't say anything, but if you want to say something, you can do that too. But yeah, send a super chat. That is next thing. I forgot to mention outside the YouTube channel. As of last week, I enabled the fiat super chats because the crypto ones, CoinTree, is kind of not working right now. If someone wants to help maintain that, that'd probably be cool. But yeah, so I'm going to work on putting them on like the super chat screen on the podcast for next time. So that'll be cool. But anyway, thanks very much for the super chat. Sorry, Kallisti, keep going.
Oh yeah, no worries. Yeah, so I mean, 1 sat per byte is the relay fee. So I mean, you do get a baseline of miner revenue that way. That's kind of what all our assumptions are based on 1 sat per byte. But then it's like, all right, price goes up to like 100,000, right? Well, suddenly our sub-cent transaction is now more than a cent. So I mean, I was saying into the chat when Litecoin Underground was asking us about fee revenue, I actually think that the sub-cent, specifically sub-cent, it might be 1 cent per transaction, but I think like the whole, we're going to do like 1/100th of a cent transactions every single time for all of eternity, I don't think is actually a thing. And Jeremy made the very good point of it might, like 1 cent per transaction 50 years from now is basically going to be the equivalent to sub-cent today. And I agree with that also.
Yeah. Because, like, let's be honest, also, like, we're in the kind of free era because it's all subsidized by holders. But at some point in the future, you're probably going to pay some money to do stuff, and that's fine. I mean, here's the thing is, like, people willingly pay credit card fees already and bank fees and stuff like that. I mean, I think we could do better than that, obviously. But, like, if I had, like, maybe I'm being really maybe Jeremy's going to lose his mind. But, like, maybe I'm being too conciliatory in saying this. But, like, if I had to pay 5 cents every time I made a crypto transaction, like a payment, I'd be super happy with that. Like, not if every time I updated my Twitter bio with a crypto. That would be a little bit annoying. That would be a little too much. That's like Twitch. Twitch costs too much. That's a BSV Twitter thingy. But if every time I bought my coffee, it's like, all right, I guys pay $3 for a little macchiato and a little sippy. Okay, $3. I paid 5 cents. I'm not complaining. I'm really not complaining, and I think we could probably keep it maybe lower than 5 cents. If they charge 10 cents, I think I'd still be fine. Just when you start to get over that, I'd start to like Bitcoin BTC right now is like around 30 to 50 cents for median. So if you trust ZeroConf, which with full RBF you can't really do anymore, but if you trust ZeroConf, if you can do a ZeroConf 30-cent Bitcoin transaction to pay for stuff, it's higher than I want to pay. That's kind of like you're getting to credit card territory here. But it's still okay. It's still okay.
It's not the absolute worst, right?
Yeah, and it's not, but I think we can do better is my point. I think we can.
So I have my main counterpoint to that is actually an example that it came up when I started going to my local BTC meetups. We have parking meters, right? I got to go downtown and I got to park my car. And what do we use for parking meters? Quarters. Well, not anymore because the US doesn't have coins anymore. But back in the day, we used to use these little coins, right? And we used to put them in the little slot. So now imagine if you had a QR code on every parking meter instead, and I could just open up my Selene wallet and just zap some sats over.
Yeah.
And that was it, right? Well, you can't do that if the fee is equivalent to the quarter.
This is most of the fiat I own right now is a few little coins partially because it's so hard to pay for parking with anything but fiat coins. And so like it's hard to do my janky workarounds.
So now we've got like this stupid app that we use instead because none of the meters take coins anymore around here. So we have like this app and you type in like the number of the meter and then it asks for all of your freaking info. And it's like, cool.
Fun fact on that. I was just at coffee today after the morning, like when I was messaging you, hey, like, here are the stories and stuff. I was at coffee with a friend, a crypto, I guess, I don't think a dev, but like some guy who like works in a crypto project from out of town came in and he was using the parking meter app to try to pay for his parking, and it just kept on glitching out on him. It wouldn't work, so he literally had to run outside and use his plasticky thing and like do the whole thing. And just like, so yeah, it failed. Like your example of like that stupid app. Yes, it sucked today. I saw it firsthand.
Yeah, and literally Bitcoin solves this because I can just do it in one tap, done. Sent you the dollar that I needed to send. And then, okay, now imagine I had to open a Lightning channel to my freaking parking meter. That doesn't make any sense. I guess it would probably be to the service who provides the parking meter, but still, I still have to do an on-chain transaction for that or use a custodial solution, which is just as good as the app that doesn't work. We're cutting out the middlemen on so many different layers here when you do something like that. And so honestly, that's like one of my killer use cases for why the fees need to be as low as they are. And I actually do kind of agree with you. 10 cents, honestly, I think is my upper bound personally. That's where I'm like starting to be like, hey, like this is magic internet money. Why do we have to pay so much?
Yeah, of course. Now, if it's 10 cents, if you had 5 million transactions a day, that would be what Bitcoin earns around what Bitcoin earns in mining revenue already. So if you're 5 million 10-cent transactions, so let's just say Bitcoin Cash ends up being way more expensive than people thought it would be, and it ends up being 10 cents. Okay, then you just need 1 million to make what Bitcoin makes. And 1 million's not that many as far as like a global payment system, right?
Not at all. That's less than the population of my city.
Yeah, so if you start like jacking that on, you get 10 million, now you have like 5 million revenue a day for the whole network. Okay, we're working with some stuff there. And then now we're starting to get more in like the Ethereum territory where Ethereum's at today. It's so if you can do like 10-cent fees, which again, yeah, it's kind of a lot, right? But I think you can do that. The thing is, I think that it's really hard to make. And I've been writing this big old document on this stuff because I've been doing some actual research onto what people are willing to pay for and stuff like that. People don't want to pay for payments in crypto. Like for the most part, people don't pay. They only pay if it's Bitcoin, i.e., they trust the value proposition. Yeah, they trust the value proposition. They want to own Bitcoin, and it helps them pay with Bitcoin. So people will pay probably around 50 cents for a transaction in regular conditions. In like urgent conditions or pumpy times, they'll pay more. But on the whole, it just seems like 50 cents is what the markets decide it's worth. Like, that's about it. And then there's more Bitcoin in the CoinJoin whirlpool on Bitcoin than there is in the entire Lightning Network. And there has been for a while. So like people are coin joining the crap out of their Bitcoin because they value privacy. And of course, every time you coin join, that's a lot of money, right? Imagine having to coin join to imagine doing like a cash fusion type thing, but with BTC fees. Like that starts to be real money. People are willing to pay for privacy though. And like Railgun generates, which is the zero knowledge, the ZK Snark smart contract on top of Ethereum and all the other ones, generates just that one alone generates several $100,000 a day in fees. And so like people will pay for privacy. They'll pay for whatever the core asset is, right? And but mostly that's all that and then they also pay for, mostly that's all people will pay for as far as like any real money today. They'll pay very small for just transactions and instant stuff. And they will also mostly pay for everything else, like data stuff. Like DeFi, people will pay because they're making a bunch of money on trades and stuff. They'll there's ENS, the Ethereum name service, makes millions a year generating usernames, right? People will pay for like digital property as far as that's, or username, or for ease of use. They'll pay for that kind of stuff. But like it's just really hard to make a living as a network just on processing payments, you know? So I think that honestly, a couple cents for a payment is probably what it'll end up being. But mostly the networks will have to make money on doing ancillary things around the payments. Like, for example, if you want to pay you want a stable coin on BCH, like a tokenized any hedge contract that you can just transact in, so you don't have to like park it and wait and stuff. You can just transact with that. But then that requires some extra computation. People might pay 10 cents a transaction to transact an uncensorable fiat, while they're only going to pay 2 cents to do with straight BCH in the beginning. Okay, that's a product. People will pay for that. Or let's do this. Let's pay to transfer this into this stock, like a digitized stock in this company or DAO or whatever on BCH, let's just say for the sake of argument here. People will pay some more for that. Oh, let's do a super private, untraceable bridge to like the zero knowledge smart contract. You know, okay, people will pay more for that. People will pay more for like their digital, like a decentralized digital identity username setup. They'll pay for that. And so,
you know, even these contracts, because also every single one of those use cases that you're talking about would probably be managed by a smart contract. And so the base case of payments is still there. The base case of miner fee revenue is still there. And then the smart contract would actually be where that extra revenue comes from. It's going to have its own little pool of funds. It needs its own little pool of funds to pay its own fees. And it's harder to dynamically calculate fees for a smart contract because let's say we're in BCH endgame and there actually might be a little bit of congestion, you know, like blocks will never be like full for an extended period of time, but there might be like a spike of activity where you might have to pay a little extra fee for a few hours, like, or, you know, for the next few blocks or something. So a smart contract might just pay a flat 1,000 sat fee. You know, really need to. Maybe it could have gotten away with a 300 sat fee, but just to make sure that just for the ease of programming, we're just going to do 1,000 sats flat. And so the user will just pay that, and that's going to be extra revenue for the miner anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that like it's all going to work out in the end. And one of these days I have to have a big, long form conversation with someone reasonable in the nano community, because the whole like zero fee stuff is a little bit annoying to me. But it's because the world works with value for value exchange kind of thing, right? As in, I pay you, you do a thing for me. And everything else we do is a value exchange, even if it doesn't have the money tokenization of the value transfer. Everything's a value transfer. Value is just truthful dialogue because no one buys something they don't value. They will lie all the time. You can't lie with money. You can, but then you lose money and then no one does that.
You can't lie anymore.
Yeah, you can't. You just run out of, you know. So, but I'd like to have the chat about like, because I think of everything in a business term, and I think the genius of Bitcoin was it turned an open source free open source software thing into a business at the same time. And that was the genius of Bitcoin. And I think that everything needs to build on that genius. You know, everything needs to figure out how to be free open source software that's open participation, but still is a business at the same time. Still runs like a business, even if it's not. Because otherwise, people do what like Blockstream did and just try to turn this thing and the tragedy of the commons, try to take it over and turn it into a business for just them and not for the rest of the users, right? And
Economic fundamental sense.
yeah, it's really fascinating stuff. And yeah, money is information, money is energy, money is cyber hornets. Okay, it's probably a good time to wrap this thing up. Where I'm sure I know what you want to show, right? Which is
my wallet.
Yeah. Although I can just see Jeremy going, our wallet.
Oh, dude, for sure. I mean, it's yeah. I mean, it's definitely both of ours. We definitely have like a pretty equal stake
What are
in
the
that.
newest improvements or features or stuff in the latest Selene release? I haven't used it since the
I was supposed to
beginning.
actually be doing a release yesterday, but then I went and got sick, so I'm supposed to do the release today. And then I had 2 podcasts I was supposed to be on, and then I slept through the first one, and now I'm here.
Well, there you
So I thought
go.
I'll be fine after this. I'm gonna get some food and then go work on that. But so we've got some additional languages coming in. We've got you can view your XPub, your XPRIV, your derivation path, just advanced info for your wallet, and that stuff that's coming. A little thing for our Argentine users.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like the decimal points on their currency because it's worthless to have decimal points on their currency. So we took that out. There's a couple little minor things, and then we've got a really big release coming after that. I'm working on a lot of backend changes. Jeremy's working on some
Mm-hmm.
pretty killer new features that really excited for, and I don't want to like spoil too much, but there are going to be like a lot of like technical improvements and one really awesome tool that we think will allow us to kind of put some money where our mouth is, a little proof in the pudding about how well BCH is being adopted. So we're really excited for that.
Yeah, a lot of fun stuff. So as always, everyone, thanks for watching. It's going to be also go back and watch the Zcash podcast I did earlier today. It has the Railgun folks on, and that's a lot of really fascinating stuff, especially for anyone interested in privacy and how that can apply programmatically to blockchains that have that functionality, because anyone can get Zcash level privacy on like an EVM thing, but for something completely different, like a UTXO based thing, like cash tokens kind of thing, it might be worth looking into how that's done. And anyway, just an interesting conversation. You should look into that. But yeah, everyone, thanks for watching. Go download the Selene wallet and try it out. It actually works pretty well. I mean, I've used it, and it's smooth, it's sleek, and it's end user products are criminally underdeveloped in the crypto world. Criminally, like,
Yeah.
oof. And so Selene's one of those like bright shining moons in the starry sky of absolute potato UX. So
And
yeah,
we're only going to get better.
yeah.
So
So
I'm really excited for the future.
yep. Everyone, thanks for watching. Thanks again to Homeboy Johnny O for the super chat. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Stay safe. Happy weekend. Happy everything. And yeah, I'll see you guys around. Bye bye.